from me, Lauren Jaffe, and welcome to another episode of Derech Eretz. Peace building is the kind of skill and pillar that can change the world. Today we talk about peace building on a community scale with the Arava Institute and peace building in the home with Charles Mendelow. Wendy Hendler starts us off.
Peace, or shalom, is a foundation of Judaism. Peace is the highest value and is even seen as more important than truth, which itself is the signature of God. We know that God changed the truth when reporting to Abraham what his wife Sarah had said when she was informed by the angels that she would give birth to a child at the age of 100. Sarah expressed her doubt about this being possible, saying, "But my husband is old." When God related this over to Abraham, he changed her words and told him that Sarah had said, "But I am old." To facilitate peace between them, God altered Sarah's words in order not to upset her husband. So important is shalom bayit, or peace in the home, that Hashem saw fit to move slightly away from the truth and change her words. Peacemaking is therefore seen as a core process in Jewish living. A core Torah principle in peacemaking is that a judge should attempt to resolve cases by compromise rather than by applying strict law. The Rambam writes, the judge must strive in all cases to formulate a compromise settlement. The judge must explain to the parties that compromise will be more satisfying for both of them. And he must speak heart to heart with them so that they will agree to compromise. This sounds counterintuitive, as Judaism holds justice to be a lofty, if not supreme, value. And yet the Torah sages were all in favor of compromise, and to this very day, this value of compromise underpins the approach of all Batei Din in the world. So how do we explain this? Applying the law results in a judgment, but it does not lead to peace, because it produces a winner and a loser, and the loser is unlikely to be appeased or reconciled with the winner. By contrast, when a mediated compromise is reached, both parties are to some extent satisfied, and this reduces enmity, and connection is hopefully restored. In making this possible, the judges have facilitated what is known in Torah as the judgment of peace. Why is this compromise referred to in this way? Because in reaching compromise, parties do more than they really are required to do. They accept less than they are entitled to or give more than they are obligated to. In this way, they go beyond the letter of the law, lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the call of duty, and this is the very essence of the virtue called charity. As a result of this process, there is judgment and charity at the same time. So we see that in the Jewish tradition, the process of compromise reflects two fundamental principles, the value of shalom or peace and the value of charity or tzedakah. And both of these values embody an even higher principle. Whether in striving for peace or in giving charity, the common element is that the person, while still aware of individual self and needs, lets go of the self for a moment and acknowledges and reaches out towards the other person. This self-transcendence is the greatest achievement and is the core of the supreme ethical teaching of Judaism, to love your neighbor as yourself. We do that by not only considering our own needs, but by recognizing and integrating consideration for both self and other equally. By opening ourselves up to reaching a compromise, we go beyond ourselves, and in so doing, we ascend the spiritual ladder and come closer to Hashem.
The Arava Institute is based on a kibbutz in Israel. They care deeply about not just Israel, but also about their neighbors. Today we chat to them about their focus of environment and how it brings about an even greater focus of peace building. We're going to get to know more about how those values intertwine and how people from different backgrounds are brought together for common goals.
The Arava Institute is an academic organization that is based on a few different pillars. One of the major pillars is the students. Our student body is comprised of a third Israeli Jewish, a third Arabs, so Israeli Arabs, Palestinian Arabs from the West Bank and from Gaza, and Jordanians, and sometimes Arabs from Morocco, from other places in the region, and the third, international students, mostly from North America, but not only. And these students come together to learn about environmentalism. We think that problems that you have on our side of the border, the other people have on their side of the border, right there. So why not work on these environmental issues together, try and find a solution together? Besides that, we have our research centers. We have 5 research centers. One is on renewable energy, the Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation. We have our Center for Transboundary Water Management, our Center for Sustainable Agriculture. We have the Center for Arid Socioecology, and we have the Jordan-Israel Center for Community, Environment, and Research. So that is our newest center in which we deal with cross-border cooperation between the Arava on the Israeli side and the Arava on the Jordanian side. Another thing we do at the Arava Institute is we have the center, it's called the Track 2 Center for Environmental Diplomacy. Track 1 is government level. Track 2 is local leadership level. We work with municipalities, we work with local leaders, political or civil leaders on environmental issues on a local level, trying to help each other between Israel and Palestine. And the reason it's so important is because we can learn from each other. Israel many times has resources that Palestine does not have. We can help share these resources and help get the information across and the actual technology across on a local level. And what we're trying to work through Track 2 is we're hoping that the cooperation that's related to environmental issues will trickle upwards towards the government level, towards Track 1, essentially. So bringing our students together from many different places in the region and the world can be a very tense situation. But there's a few things that we do to try and work that out. One of them, first of all, is the fact that we live on a kibbutz in the middle of nowhere. We create an intentional community where an Israeli who has done the army and a Palestinian who has the army affected his hometown live together in the same room. And they create a community for a semester or two and create lifelong friendships through the whole living situation where they just can't escape in a good way. They create their own atmosphere of peace and friendship within the kibbutz, within the campus of the Arava Institute, because they can't otherwise. The students and interns can choose which classes to take, but there's a class that everybody has to take. All the students and interns take a class called Peace Leadership Seminars, called PELS, where they talk about the elephant in the room. They discuss the situation in the Middle East. They discuss the feelings that they have from the cultures that they come from, the baggage that they bring, the narratives that everybody brings. We have the leaders of PELS, of our Peace Leadership Seminar, are an Israeli Jew, an Arab, and a woman who comes from a storytelling background. And they help everybody find their own narrative. They help everybody understand each other's narrative. In this framework, together with the intentional community building that we do, we are able to learn about the other and learn from the other in a way that creates actual friendships, in a way that respects everybody and tries to break down barriers. We like to say at the Arava Institute that the resource that is lacking the most in the Middle East is trust. What we try to build at the Arava Institute, besides the environmental study and environmental research, is a base of trust so that these people can go back to their communities or other communities and make a real difference in a cross-border and cross-cultural level. I've always had a connection with Kibbutz Torah because I was there as part of my army service. Kibbutz is a small community, a kind of a collective community, socialist. We all share a dining hall. We have laundry services. It's a wonderful place to live. We have an active synagogue. We keep kosher. This isn't something that is in most kibbutzim. So the kibbutz as a community does respect and is built on many Jewish values. The Arava Institute doesn't necessarily come from within the Jewish aspect, but it is the people who founded the Arava Institute definitely do come from within that community and from within that background. And I actually have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in geography with an emphasis on environmental planning and development, but I never actually did anything with it. During my university studies, I worked in an interfaith organization, and so I have those two backgrounds and my background in the youth movement and informal education. Coming to the kibbutz, I was looking for a job, and a role in the short programs department opened up, and it combined my geography background, my informal education background, bringing groups together, taking groups on a journey from A to B, and my background in interfaith work. It brought them all together, and I found myself there working in short programs. I'm now the director of the short programs department, and it's an amazing, amazing job getting to bring study tours and workshops and people from all over the world to the Arava Institute to learn about environment, about environmentalism, about cross-cultural work. It's something that is very important to me, and I love doing what I do. Part of what the short programs department does is we provide support to student tours as well. So I was lucky enough to do the logistics for a Pels trip. Every semester they have a peace leadership seminar field trip. So one of my first semesters I actually joined the trip, and just being a fly on the wall when you take students, Palestinian, Jordanian, Arab students to Yad Vashem, to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and you take Jewish students, Israeli students, to Lifta, which was an Arab village that was destroyed during 1948 War of Independence, or other locations which are very meaningful to the other side and touch on a nerve. Just that experience that I had of being a fly on the wall, seeing the students interact with each other, was incredible. There were tears, there was shouting, there were feelings that were coming out. And at the end of the day, they all had to go back and live with it and live with each other. And what we do there is so important, because by the end of the semester, even if they're not able to work out the differences, they're able to understand the other one's emotions and where the other comes from, and are able to work with these differences much, much better. I think our Derech Eretz is that no matter who you are and where you came from, you bring your own narrative, you bring your own story. And these can be recognized across borders, beyond borders, throughout all of humanity. And since these stories are shared and the environment is shared, we can work together to make the world a better place, also through the environment and also through building communities together.
Charles Mendelow is a mediator based in the heart of the city of Joburg. We get to hear some of his wise words around peace building in the home.
I'm in serious need of some mediation. Myself and my wife are having some problems. What do you suggest I do?
Okay, so look, why don't you come and have a meeting with me? Let's see what's what, and let's see how we can sort this out. Me and my 3 siblings, we're the luckiest people. I honestly think we're the luckiest people we know. My mom is still alive. She's 97 years old. Razor sharp, wise, and my dad and her adored each other. My dad was a very high-profile top lawyer and, on the board of deputies, and a pretty well-known man. And so we had a lot of traditional Jewish stuff. I came from a very well-read family. I'm an attorney in private practice, specialized in family law. A mediator is someone, it's not a marriage counselor, but helps people in high conflict divorces and even non-high conflict divorces to resolve things amicably. Over the years, this has become pretty much compulsory now in divorce cases, and I'm pretty much at this stage of my life almost full-time mediating. When there's not peace between people, their houses get bombed. When there's not peace between people, they're refugees. When there's not peace between people, they're maimed tragedies. They're minefields. So you might ask, well, what's that got to do with divorce mediation? Well, the answer is that the skills of resolving international conflicts are the same skills that are needed when you're resolving disputes between a husband and a wife, or parents and children, or between a school and a child who's being expelled, or relatives fighting over a will. These all are the type of things that fall within the realm of family mediation. Things go down to the same principles. They call it the 3 Ps. You've got to manage the people. You've got to manage the egos. So that's the first. Then the problem, whatever that dispute might be about. Mediation is about making deals. And then the third issue is the process. So the 3 things in terms of is the needs, the interests, and the concerns. And when you look at it from there can often be a lot of common ground because both parents might love this child. 2 people or 3 siblings fighting over wool, the concern is what is this going to cost? And so you look deeper. And when you go deeper, you find the common ground, which can often be a basis for a settlement. Also, under problem solving, one of the mantras that I'm absolutely dogmatic about is when you're stuck with 2 options, take the third. In other words, so often people think they're deadlocked because they're only seeing it from a limited space. The standard deadlock, this one says this and this one says this, and neither will budge. And when you look at all kinds of options, then process helps a lot as well. In very high conflict things, part of it is you have private meetings separately with the parties. You make an absolute promise that what will ever be said by the one party to me will not be conveyed to the other party unless I'm expressly authorized to do so. And very often, there's a lot of information that neither party would give you if they were sitting face to face. And very often, that part of that information is what compromises they're prepared to make. They won't say it to the other party, but if you know, and it often happens that I'll be sitting in a situation that this one tells me, look, I know that I'm asking for 10 million, but actually I'll settle for 5. And the other one will say to me in a private meeting, I know that I'm only prepared to, I'm only told them I'm only prepared to pay 3 million, but I'll pay 5. So you suddenly, then you've got a ship that you can bring into the harbor. But the problem, you've got to be very careful, because if you say, okay, guys, what happens if we do a deal at 5? This one will say, no, I want 6. And this one, so you've got to be able to hold that space. So that's where you've got to be quite managing. But those private meetings are so revealing in terms of not only where they'll be compromising, but what they need out of the deal. The word shalom is the same as the word whole, which is shalem. And peace is about being whole. The absence of peace is fragmentation. You there, I'm here, and we're at all. And we're at each other. You're a threat to me, and I'm a threat to you. There's a wonderful teaching of one of the great Chabad rabbis who said that actually we're all part of God. And we must actually see ourselves as organically linked, that we are just different limbs of the same divine. And when you cut off somebody's head off, you're cutting your own head off. Just like you wouldn't injure one of your own limbs. And all you've got to do is see the big whole picture, the shalem. See the big picture where everything fits in. And when you see that picture, then everything has its place. So it's wholeness. And whole, we see it today. We see how we're all in this together with the COVID, whether you're Chinese and whether you're Russian and whether what. And it's the same virus, it's the same thing. We need each other. So that fragmented view doesn't work. And one of the things that I find very exciting about today's day and age is, unlike any other day and age, the consequences of choices are in front of us. We know what will happen with the wrong choices. We have enough information and intelligence. We can see one end of the world to the other. And what we all have to do is see how we all are in this together. And if you don't like somebody, that's fine. But don't act it out, because that person's not going to disappear. And it's about seeing and looking for that God spot, that good spot. And somehow or other, more often than not, you engage at that level, there's something that can come out, and someone that might agree to get help about it. The word Derech Eretz has a number of meanings. The sort of colloquial meaning of Derech Eretz means politeness. Speak to someone with Derech Eretz. So the English word would be civility. It's a very important value. It's about not acting out. It's about being contained. It's about, there are rules, there are places, there's about appropriateness. You can't get anywhere without that. The minute you break civility, you break the peace.
Well, we've come to the end of the show for this week's episode of Derech Eretz. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message on Derech Eretz Connect. From me, Lauren Jaffe, and the Derech Eretz team, have a beautiful week.